Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It was budget day in India today, the last full budget before the general election next year. Was it populist or prudent? They say good economics is bad politics. Could India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman balance the two? We'll bring you the highlights, cut the jargon and try to connect the dots. Also look at the global picture. Will there be a recession after all, and how much will it impact you? All of that is coming up, plus why South Korea of all places is becoming a key defense player in Europe. Why Canada has made drugs like cocaine legal. Yes, hard drugs, they're now legal. And what is the Pope doing in the Congo? You don't want to miss any of these stories. And one more, your killer look may be killing you. We'll talk about toxic makeup. The headlines first. The United States is preparing another aid package for Ukraine. This one is worth $2 billion and includes longer-range rockets for the first time. So far, the US has spent more than $50 billion on Ukraine in military and non-military aid. 2 years since the coup, this is what Myanmar looks like. Empty streets and closed shops across the country on the second anniversary of the military takeover. In Australia, a long hunt has come to an end. A coin-sized, highly radioactive capsule has finally been found. It fell off a truck on a remote stretch of land. The UK is witnessing the largest mass strike in the country in a generation. Close to 500,000 teachers, university lecturers, civil servants and train drivers are on strike. They want better pay and better working conditions. And electric car sales set a new record in the European Union. 12% of the new cars sold last year run on green energy. This is the highest number ever. Our lead tonight is, of course, the budget. This budget is unique in a lot of aspects. I have some trivia for you. For the first time in India's history, we had a female finance minister presenting the budget in a parliament session opened by a female president. The day began with Nirmala Sitharaman visiting the Rashtrapati Bhavan. She met with President Draupadi Murmu. Sitharaman is the sixth finance minister to present 5 consecutive union budgets. She gave her shortest budget speech today, just 87 minutes long. But the budget was not short on substance. It is being cheered for all the right reasons. The budget this year has something for everyone. It is fiscally prudent, even though there were tax breaks for the middle class. There is an ambitious roadmap for growth and a strong emphasis on the fundamentals. I'm sure you already know about the key highlights. The rebate on income tax, that's what everyone's talking about. The highest ever outlay for railways and more. Tonight on Vantage, we'll look at the big picture. India is now pegged to be the fastest growing economy in the world. Does this budget support India's rise as an emerging power? Over the next few minutes, we'll unpack the budget for you. We've put together the 5 big takeaways. We're starting with the fundamentals. What does a rising power need the most? Infrastructure, roads, ports, housing, projects that create jobs, raise productivity, and improve connectivity. These are essential for sustaining India's growth. And India is spending big money to achieve this. It's called capital spending. It's going up by 33%. A whopping $122 billion has been allocated to build these assets. Urban development is a big focus this time. It's also an urgent need. India's cities are choking. The finance minister has announced an urban infrastructure fund, around $1 billion. Where will this money go? To build infrastructure in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities of India. Takeaway number 2, the budget for diplomacy. This year, the spotlight will be on India's foreign policy. The finance minister said that India has a unique opportunity. The G20 presidency can strengthen its role in the world order. But does the budget help? The assistance package for the neighborhood has been slashed. Last year, it was around $767 million. This year, it has gone down to around $660 million. India seems to be taking a more targeted approach, trying to do more with less. Allocation for Bhutan and the Maldives has gone up. The highest allocation is for Bhutan, almost $300 million. For the Maldives, around $48 million. Both are important neighbors of India. There's budgetary allocation for Afghanistan as well. Despite the Taliban takeover, India is still supporting the Afghan people, around $24 million for Afghanistan in this budget. Iran is still under international sanctions, but India has once again earmarked 100 crore rupees or $12 million for the Chabahar port. It's the same as last year. Chabahar is a strategically very important project. The budget quota for Bangladesh, Nepal and Sri Lanka has been cut. No change in the money allocated to Africa. Next on our list is defence. The defence budget has seen a hike, and with good reason. In recent years, India's security challenges have grown. The threat of cross-border terrorism from Pakistan remains, and the challenge from China continues to grow. The budget recognizes India's growing defence needs. This year, $70 billion have been allocated to defence. That's close to 6 lakh crore rupees, a 13% hike from last year. A big chunk of this will go into salaries and pensions. Almost $20 billion has been set aside for acquisitions, new weapons, aircraft, warships and other military hardware. Takeaway number 4, futuristic high-tech initiatives. I have a list again. Centers of Excellence for Artificial Intelligence, the plan to set up 100 labs to develop apps for 5G, and the e-courts project to digitize courts. But Digital India seems to be taking a backseat. The budget for this flagship project, Digital India, has been slashed substantially. It's taken a 37% cut. The fifth and final takeaway, the aggressive push towards green energy. The finance minister announced the National Green Hydrogen Mission. As the name suggests, the goal is to promote green hydrogen. The mission targets 4 areas: creation, production, utilization and export of green hydrogen. The goal is to enable India's transition away from fossil fuels. Over $2 billion have been allocated for this. You see, building a budget is a tricky balancing act. It's even more tough in an election year. Although in India, every year is an election year with some state or the other going to the polls, but next year is the general election. Prime Minister Modi said there's something for everyone in this budget.
अमृत काल का ये पहला बजट विकसित भारत के विराट संकल्प को पूरा करने के लिए एक मजबूत नींव का निर्माण करेगा। ये बजट वंचितों को वरीयता देता है। ये बजट आज की एस्पिरेशनल सोसाइटी, गांव, गरीब, किसान, मध्यम वर्ग सभी के सपनों को पूरा करेगा।
So those were the big takeaways from the budget. Like I said, it had a lot more, the budget speech. The most talked about part is the tax relief for the middle class. If you earn 7 lakh rupees or less in a year, you don't have to pay an income tax.
Currently, those with income up to 5 lakh do not pay any tax, do not pay any income tax in both old and new regimes. I propose to increase the rebate limit to 7 lakhs in the I propose to increase the rebate limit to 7 lakh in the new tax regime. Thus, persons in the new tax regime with income up to 7 lakhs will not have to pay any tax at all.
But it's bad news if you're a smoker.
National Calamity Contingent Duty on specified cigarettes was last revised 3 years ago. This is proposed to be revised upwards by about 16%.
One of the key challenges was to contain the fiscal deficit. That's the difference between the government's earning and spending. The government has set a lower target of 5.9% for the year ahead.
The fiscal deficit is estimated to be 5.9% of the GDP. In my budget speech for 21-22, I had announced that we plan to continue the path of fiscal consolidation, reaching a fiscal deficit of below 4.5% by 2025-26, with a fairly steady decline over the period. We have adhered to this path.
Another consistent pitch has been the ease of doing business. Some serious efforts seem to have been made in this direction. As the world decouples from China, India is keen to transform itself into a business-friendly destination.
For enhancing ease of doing business, more than 39,000 compliances have been reduced and more than 3,400 legal provisions have been decriminalized. For furthering the trust-based governance, we have introduced the Jan Vishwas Bill to amend 42 central acts. This budget proposes a series of measures to unleash the potential of our economy. Vivad se Vishwas.
Then we come to Mission Millets. India wants to become the global hub for millets, or Shri Ann, as the finance minister said. Here's what she proposed in the budget.
We are the largest producer and second largest exporter of Shri Anna in the world. We grow several types of Shri Anna, such as Shri Anna Jowar, Shri Anna Ragi, Shri Anna Bajra, Shri Anna Kutu, Ramdana, Kangni, Kutni, Kutki, Kodo, China, and Sama. These have a number of health benefits and have been an integral part of our food for centuries. I acknowledge with pride the huge service done by small farmers in contributing to the health of fellow citizens by growing these Shri Anna. Now, to make India a global hub for Shri Anna, the Indian Institute of Millet Research, ideally Indian Institute of the Shri Anna Research, Hyderabad, will be supported as the center of excellence for sharing best practices, research, and technologies at the international level.
And now to technology. 5G will be critical in shaping the world's growth story, so it's no surprise that investment in 5G has been increased.
100 labs for developing applications using 5G services will be set up in engineering institutions. To realize a new range of opportunities, business models, and employment potential. The labs will cover, among others, applications such as smart classrooms, precision farming, intelligent transport systems, and healthcare applications.
India has also led from the front in the war against climate change. The budget furthers the policy of go green, go clean.
Honorable Prime Minister has given a vision for life or lifestyle for environment to spur a movement of environmentally conscious lifestyle. India is moving forward firmly for the Panchamrit, the net zero carbon emission by 2070 to usher in green industrial and economic transition. This budget builds on our focus on green growth. The recently launched National Green Hydrogen Mission, with an outlay of 19,700 crores, will facilitate transition of the economy to low carbon intensity, reduce dependence on fossil fuel imports, and make the country assume technology and market leadership in this sunrise sector. Our target is to reach an annual production of 5 MMT by 2030.
And now let me show you some headlines. Why a global recession is inevitable in 2023. Economists place 70% chance for US recession in 2023. Eurozone predicted to have a deep recession. Worst fall in UK living standards since records began. China is suffering a major financial crisis. These are all stories from last year. You couldn't escape the bad news then. Everyone was talking about a global recession. It was being called inevitable in 2023. Well, we are in 2023. We've entered the month of February. Are we still staring at a recession? Experts are divided. 3 weeks ago, the World Bank shared a bleak outlook. It said the global economy is, quote unquote, perilously close to a recession. Here is the forecast. Global growth will slow to 1.7%. The world's richest economies are slowing down. I'm talking about the United States, Japan, and the Eurozone. The Eurozone is the group of countries that have the euro as their currency. There are 20 such countries. Growth in all these economies has been steadily declining. In 2021, they grew at 5.3%. 2022, that's last year, 2.5%. So the growth halved. What about this year, 2023? Just 0.5%. That is the projection, less than 1% growth. So the richest countries will stall. What about the rest of the world? In South Asia, the growth rate will touch 5.5%. The World Bank predicts India will grow at 6.6%, China at 4.9%. Why such a grim forecast? The World Bank has spelled out 4 reasons: high inflation, high interest rates, reduced investment, and disruptions caused by the Russia-Ukraine war. Obvious problems ailing the global economy. This is the World Bank's forecast. Some others paint a less gloomy picture, but gloomy nonetheless, like the International Monetary Fund or the IMF. Their new outlook came out this week. It says the global economy will grow at 2.9%. The United States, 1.4%, the Eurozone, 0.7%. So the West is still struggling, but not India. The IMF says India will grow at 6.1%, the fastest growing economy in the world, and China at 5.2%. So India and China will play a vital role. They will drive the global economy. Together, these two countries are projected to account for over 50% of the global growth this year. To sum up, the IMF believes there won't be a recession, but there's a need to be cautious.
Kristalina, should our audience be pessimistic or optimistic about the year ahead?
Well, stay put. My message is it is less bad than we feared a couple of months ago. But less bad doesn't quite yet mean good.
Less bad doesn't quite mean good. That is the message. And India's Reserve Bank seems to agree. 2 weeks back, the RBI released its own assessment. It does not dismiss the risk of recession. Allow me to quote from what it said: a slowdown in growth with possibilities of recession in large swathes of the global economy has become the baseline assessment, even as inflation may average well above targets. Emerging markets are appearing more resilient than in the year gone by, but their biggest risks in 2023 stem from U.S. monetary policy and the U.S. dollar. Do you see the trend? Western economies may be in a state of decline, but they still have an oversized influence on our world. Some are getting a reality check, though. The United Kingdom, for instance, the British economy is shrinking. It is likely to contract by 0.6%. And that is not even the most humiliating part. The British economy will shrink more than Russia. Remember, Russia is fighting a war with Ukraine. It faces sweeping sanctions from the West, and yet the Russian economy is expected to do better than the UK. Do you know what this means? The UK will be the world's worst performing major economy this year. How much will this impact the rest of the world? We'll have to wait and see. A documentary on this decline would help. Yesterday, we told you about the possibility of the US and China going to war, an assessment from an American general. Tonight, we can tell you that they are at war. Not a conventional war, but a tech war. On America's target is Huawei, the Chinese tech giant. The US is banning its firms from exporting technology to Huawei. Washington says it's a threat to national security. It has also accused Huawei of working in cahoots with the Chinese Communist Party. The restrictions began in 2019. You need a government license to export technology to Huawei now. But now Washington says these licenses will not be issued anymore. And Huawei is not the only company on America's radar. It has roughly 175 Chinese companies on its red flag list. It is making regulations stricter. The US is also trying to clip China's wings when it comes to semiconductors. What are semiconductors? Think of them as the foundation stones for making computers, mobile phones, weapons, and almost everything in between. Semiconductors or chips. Now, China plays a critical role in the assembly, packaging, and testing of this component. There are 4 other nations in this club: South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and the United States. And here's the flip side. The big producers and exporters of semiconductors are also the biggest importers. How does that work? You see, the different components needed to make these chips are all imported. China wants to master this game, ramp up its ability to manufacture and beat its rivals. But the United States does not want this to happen. So what does it do? Cut China's access, prevent China from buying the latest technology for semiconductors. How can the US do that? First, it imposed restrictions on exports of chips to China in 2015. Then it extended these restrictions, first in 2021 and then again in 2022. But that wasn't enough. The US needed a concerted effort to contain China. And now it's building a coalition to do this. Who are the members? The United States, Japan, and the Netherlands. As of 2021, the US had a market share of 54%, Japan 6%, Europe another 6%. That's 66% of the global semiconductor market. Reports suggest that these 3 players have reached a deal. They will impose new restrictions on exports of chip-making tools to China. We don't have the full details of the pact, and the implementation could take months. That's because Japan and the Netherlands are still finalizing the legalities. But why Japan and the Netherlands, of all countries? They're at a vantage point in this game. The US wants to keep extreme ultraviolet lithography, or EUV, out of China's hands. This is basically technology which is critical in designing chips. The only manufacturer of this tech is a company called ASML. Where do you think it's based? The Netherlands. Connect the dots. Washington also wants to block the transfer of DUV, deep ultraviolet lithography equipment. This is used in the auto and industrial sectors. Japan aces this technology, companies like Canon, Nikon, and Tokyo Electron Limited, which explains why Japan has been roped in. What will be the impact on China? If the deal goes through, Chinese firms will not be able to import these goods. It will hamper their overall production. China has been quick to issue a warning. It says such a deal will threaten the global semiconductor supply chain. As of today, the US only has an in-principle nod by Japan and the Netherlands. There is no clarity if all these companies will be on board or are on board, but the intentions and the tension are amply clear. When I say South Korea, what is it that comes to your mind? Perhaps BTS and the K-pop scene, or Squid Game, which became Netflix's most watched series. Even mobile phones and electronics. But what about weapons? Defense equipment, not a South Korean specialty, or so we think. Well, that story is changing, and changing fast. South Korea's defense industry is taking some giant strides. Until 2021, South Korea was the world's 8th largest arms exporter. It accounted for 2.8% of global arms trade. But something changed dramatically in Seoul's favor last year. In 2022, the value of its defense exports rose by 177%, 177% in 1 year. It's a mind-boggling jump. If there's one country that has benefited from the war in Ukraine, it is South Korea. It's a politically incorrect thing to say, but the war in Ukraine has opened the floodgates for South Korea's defense industry. European countries are scrambling to replenish their military stocks. They've traditionally relied on countries like Germany and the United States for their defense needs. But Germany is itself caught in an awkward position. It has been reluctant to provide military aid to Ukraine from the word go. That has earned it a reputation. Countries now view Germany as an indecisive force, a country that cannot take Russia head-on. Experts are calling out Berlin's confused defense policy and weak leadership. These are the terms they've used. They've termed it strategic liability. What about the United States? Well, America's situation is far from ideal. Its military stockpiles are under severe pressure, and it needs to look after its own needs before helping allies. So what do the allies do? They look for alternatives, and that's where South Korea comes in. European countries are rushing to South Korea. Poland is leading the pack. And this shift has been very sudden. Let me show you data from June last year. Poland placed an order with South Korea. It wanted K2 main battle tanks and 1,000 of them, 1,000. Also K9 self-propelled howitzers, almost 700 of these, and FA-50 light combat aircraft. Poland wanted 48 of these. Then came October. Poland placed another order. This was for more than 200 South Korean Chunmoo rocket artillery systems. Do you know how much these deals are worth? Around $12 billion US. These are the biggest ever defense contracts for South Korea, and it's not just arms they're sharing. South Korean forces will soon train with Polish troops. Seoul is becoming Warsaw's best bet in the defense sector. Then we have Norway. Norway too has ordered K9 self-propelled howitzers from South Korea's Hanwha Defense. And then we have Finland and Estonia. Turkey too is turning east and looking to South Korea. It's buying a critical component for its Altay battle tank project from the Koreans. S&T Heavy Industries will provide Turkey with a 1,500 horsepower automatic transmission. This deal is worth $217 million US. Now some questions. Why South Korea? And why in the last 1 year? Let's go back to the case of Poland. Poland first wanted to buy the famous American HIMARS. Poland wanted 500 of those. HIMARS are rocket launchers. They have proven their worth in Ukraine's battlefields. So many European countries now want them. But the US cannot manufacture these systems, at least not in a time frame which suits Europe's needs. South Korea can. The first batch of Chunmoo systems is expected to reach Poland sometime this year, and South Korea can also expand production. The US and Germany cannot. They're already operating at their limits. South Korea also agrees to domestic production of weapon systems, which means countries that want Seoul's weapons can have them manufactured on their soil. It's a very attractive proposition for countries like Poland. They've been trying to ramp up their defense industries for long, so Korean firms making in Europe will be a welcome idea. Seoul has set itself some big targets. It wants to become the world's 4th largest arms exporter by 2027. And to achieve that, the government has rolled out a $770 million funding package. This was last year, and the plan has been a phenomenal success so far. Needless to say, Western military giants are not happy, but South Korea has arrived. Getting a series of European nations to buy your weapons is no joke. It's a statement. Europe is losing patience with the United States. It is looking for alternatives, and South Korea fits the bill. Pope Francis is in Africa. He is visiting the Democratic Republic of Congo. And in a speech, he said, hands off Congo, hands off Africa. Stop choking Africa. It's not a mind to be stripped or a terrain to be plundered. What do you think he was talking about? Who was he taking aim at? And is there more to this visit than meets the eye? Africa is the only region in the world where the Catholic faith is growing. Here's a report. Pope Francis is visiting 2 African countries hit by conflict, the Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan. During his 6-day visit, he aims to deliver a message of peace. The 86-year-old is the first pontiff to visit Congo in 4 decades. As he began his visit on Tuesday, thousands cheered for him, chased his Pope mobile and waved flags. But the joyous mood of the vibrant welcome soon turned somber. In his speech, the first ever Latin American Pope condemned the exploitation of Congo. He said foreign powers must stop plundering Africa's natural resources. He denounced what he called the poison of greed.
Giù le mani della Repubblica Democratica del Congo, giù le mani dell'Africa, basta soffocare l'Africa. L'Africa non è una miniera da sfruttare o un suolo da saccheggiare. L'Africa sia protagonista del suo destino.
He added that the rich world must realize that the people of Africa are more precious than the minerals in the earth beneath them. Congo is known to have some of the world's richest deposits of diamonds, gold, copper, cobalt, and tin, among others. But this has led to severe problems in the Central African country. It has stoked conflict between militias, government troops, and foreign invaders. Mining of these minerals is also linked to the inhumane treatment of workers, not to mention the degradation of the environment.
Quel moto che esce dall'inconscio di tante culture, di tanta gente. Africa va sfruttata e questo è terribile. Dopo quello politico si è scatenato infatti un colonialismo economico altrettanto schiavizzante, Così questo paese ampiamente depredato non riesce a beneficiare a sufficienza delle sue immense risorse. Si è giunti al paradosso che i frutti della sua terra lo rendano straniero ai suoi abitanti. Il veleno dell'avidità ha reso i suoi diamanti insanguinati.
Eastern Congo has been plagued by violence. It is linked to the complex fallout of the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, Congo's neighbor. Congo, as the Pope said, has been devoured by violence, with 5.7 million people internally displaced and 26 million facing severe hunger. The Pope also criticized rich countries for their ignorance. This is his 5th trip to Africa in the 10 years that he's been the Pope. But was it just to scold the West? Or is there more to this visit? Africa is being seen as the future of the Catholic Church. It's the only continent where the Catholic flock is growing, both in terms of practicing the faith and fresh vocations to priesthood. And Congo stands out here. This sprawling African country, hands down, has the most Catholics. Half of its 105 million people are Catholics, with over 6,000 priests, 10,000 nuns, and over 4,000 seminarians, making them 3.6% of the total young men studying for priesthood globally. The Catholic Church has always played a role in the Congo. It has been vocal on democracy and human rights. In 2016, when President Joseph Kabila postponed elections, the Congo Bishops' Conference staged protests. Their agitation helped force Kabila to renounce a 3rd term. Since then, Catholics in the Congo have remained politically engaged. The Pope wants more. He says he wants to reshape the Church as a field hospital for wounded souls. Should drugs be made illegal? A lot of countries are debating this. Canada has taken a decision. It has legalized hard drugs like heroin and cocaine in the province of British Columbia. And this is being sold as a reform move. This region has a serious drug problem. Canada hopes that by making drugs legal, it can curb the overdose. But does it really work? Which other countries have made drugs legal? And how much has it helped? Our next report explores. If you're in Canada, you won't be arrested for carrying drugs anymore. Of course, conditions apply. You should be above 18 years of age. You should be in the province of British Columbia. And you should be carrying not more than 2.5 grams of hard drugs. This includes heroin, morphine, fentanyl, which is a synthetic opioid, and meth. So why has Canada decriminalized drugs? It's part of a 3-year-long experiment to curb overdose. At the same time, the sale of these drugs remains illegal, only possession has been made legal. These drugs cannot be possessed in schools, childcare facilities, and airports. Thousands of police officers in British Columbia are being trained on this rule change. What's the response so far? A minister in British Columbia said the step breaks down the fear and shame associated with substance abuse. Another called it a monumental shift in drug policy. But not everyone agrees. Some experts say that the 2.5 gram limit is not enough to gauge the habits of many addicts. And this is not the first time that Canada has taken such a step. In 2018, the country legalized the use of recreational cannabis. Adults in Canada are now allowed to possess up to 30 grams of legally produced cannabis. They can grow up to 4 cannabis plants per household. It is also sold in stores. Which brings us to the obvious question, how bad is the problem of drug abuse in Canada? As of December 2022, an estimated 21% of Canadians, that is 6 million people, were said to have been addicted to drugs at some point in their life. So what is addiction? When you crave something, you lose control of the amount or frequency of use. You feel the compulsion to use and continue to use despite consequences. It's called the 4 C's approach. Alcohol, nicotine, and cannabis are the most commonly abused items in Canada. 47,000 Canadian deaths are linked to substance abuse every year. 3% of Canadians have used at least one illicit drug in the past year. This includes crack and ecstasy. And it's worse for young people. 60% of illicit drugs used in Canada are between 15 to 24 years of age. Let's compare this to the rest of the world. According to the World Population Review, Afghanistan is the drug capital of the world. 1 million Afghans from 15 to 64 years of age suffer from drug addiction. The United States consumes more illicit drugs than any other country. 6% of the American population uses illegal drugs. Almost 1 in 10 adults in the UK said they used illegal drugs in 2017. Production of opium has increased in Myanmar since the military coup in February 2021. In war-torn Ukraine, more than 300,000 people inject themselves with drugs like heroin regularly. It's a catastrophe, to say the least. And if you think these figures are staggering, let us tell you about the global market of illicit drugs. It's hard to estimate. A few serious attempts have been made to make sense of it, but figures vary drastically. According to a 2019 RAND report, Americans spend almost $150 billion on illicit drugs annually. A UN report said that the Taliban earned more than $400 million between 2018 and 2019 from drug trade. Drug lords in Asia are making billions of dollars, anywhere between $30 and $61 billion. Even though the data is scattered, it points towards one thing. Drug market means big money. How do governments deal with it? By controlled legalization. Around 30 countries have legalized the use of marijuana for medicinal purposes. In Europe, it's Malta, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Spain, and Portugal. In the US, 18 states, including Washington and California, have legalized cannabis. Uruguay, Mexico, and South Africa chose the same path. And what's the situation in India? Again, alarming. The National Drug Dependence Treatment Center found that a sizable population is affected by substance abuse disorders. 15.8 million children aged 10 to 17 are addicted to substance. Alcohol is the most used psychoactive substance used by people in India, followed by cannabis and opioids. People in the states of Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Sikkim, and Chhattisgarh are the highest cannabis users. Needless to say, drug abuse is a huge problem with no solution in sight. Is Canada's experiment the right way to go? It's hard to say at the moment. What we can tell you for sure is this: addiction to illicit drugs can ruin lives. Empathy, education, and counseling can go a long way. It is said that the real estate market is a good gauge for an economy. Housing booms and busts impact financial markets and a lot more. So home buying patterns are worth tracking. Recent headlines from China say that young people are wary of blocking their money in the housing market, and we'll discuss the reasons for this trend in just a bit. But it also got us thinking about young people in general, the world over. How much do they invest in the property market? For many, it's an existential question to own a home or not. It seems that's no longer a dilemma for millennials. Now, who exactly are the millennials? These are people born between 1981 and 1996. In India, they make up almost 34% of the population. 440 million people in India are millennials. The pandemic has changed them in more ways than one. The virus from China has turned millennials in India into home buyers. They've started investing in housing. It's a sector that they've shunned for a very long time. So what caused this change? At first, developers felt this was due to work from home. It became the norm during the pandemic, as you would know. But work from home is ending. Home buying is not. And this is important because Indian millennials are a very important market. Most of them are in their peak buying years. They have easy access to home loans. And they accounted for more than 50% of the houses bought in 2020. In 2021, India's real estate market was worth $200 billion. It's expected to touch $1 trillion by the end of this decade, 2030. It will contribute to 13% of the country's GDP. So what are Indian millennials looking for when they buy a house? Earlier, the emphasis was on compact homes close to their workplace, but now the focus is on smart homes. Proximity to the workplace is no longer a top priority, but connectivity remains important, as does health. Millennials are looking for homes in greener areas. Same story in the US. The country has about 80 million millennials. That's about 43% of America's population. And they're also the largest share of home buyers. They're digitizing the home buying experience, virtual tours, digital appraisal scheduling, virtual inspections, remote notary services, digital closings. All of this is par for the course for the tech-savvy segment. They're also twice as likely to use their mobile phones to zero in on that perfect house. Twice as likely as the baby boomers, people who were born between 1946 and 1964, the baby boomers. But American millennials are only playing catch-up with their Chinese counterparts. In 2017, an HSBC study found that 70% of Chinese millennials were already proud home owners, 70%, unpacking the Chinese dream of home ownership. It's no mean feat if you look at their history. Till the second half of the 20th century, China was a mass public rental society, private ownership of homes, made up less than 30% of the population. But China's recent property crisis has put the brakes on millennials buying homes. Last year, property investment fell by over 12% in China. The start of new construction fell by around 45%. It's the biggest fall in almost a decade. And this has led to Chinese millennials joining the mortgage boycott. What's the mortgage boycott? Homeowners have stopped paying EMIs to banks. That's because they do not know when the homes will be ready, so they're not paying the EMIs. And this is dissuading many from taking the plunge. They're not buying homes anymore. In Singapore, a home for a millennial is often an aspirational goal. A lot like here in India, something that reflects their success story. A home tells them and their friends that they have arrived. 1 in 3 millennials in Singapore wants to buy a luxury home. 66% justify it as being a reliable long-term investment. 30% cite societal pressure, social status as the reason. Now, there's a reason why millennials are branded the me generation. The desire for deluxe housing reflects this mindset. Most of them did not rush into buying a home. They took their time and they took the plunge when they thought they were ready. The growth of the global real estate market depends on this shift. It has grown close to $4,000 billion this year, a growth of more than 7% from last year, and it is projected to grow to more than $5,200 billion by 2027. Lots of numbers. A recent survey found that while millennials are the most confident generation when it comes to financial literacy, they're also the most stressed. So buying a house remains a stressful decision. That's something that they have in common with their parents. But it seems the millennials have done their math finally. They're happy to finally grow some roots and own some real estate. They're no more the rent generation. Now, I'm sure you've heard about toxic workplaces and toxic relationships. But have you heard about toxic makeup? Probably not, but there's a good chance you've used it. Toxic makeup is made of forever chemicals. These chemicals help cosmetic products last longer. That's because they don't break down naturally. And this shelf life comes at a cost that you are bearing. The cosmetics industry has been trying to hide this cost from you. It wants you to believe that all makeup products are safe, that there are no side effects, but the truth is quite the opposite. Cosmetic products, especially those containing forever chemicals, have been linked to fatal health conditions like cancer. And that's not all. These products can also cause birth defects and serious reproductive issues. I know it sounds scary, but let me tell you this. I'm just scratching the surface here. There are toxins in all kinds of cosmetics. One investigation threw up names of commonly used brands. They use forever chemicals. Let me tell you a bit more about them. These chemicals are designed to last longer in the environment. They're usually substances called PFAs. Now, PFAs are man-made chemicals. There are about 12,000 of them. They repel grease, water, stains, and heat. Such properties make them useful for the cosmetics industry. They allow the products to remain on human skin for a long time. They also penetrate the skin deeper. And PFAs are widely used. Here's what a peer-reviewed study from 2021 found. Forever chemicals, or PFAs, are widely used across the United States and Canada. The study examined 231 cosmetic products. PFAs were found in more than half of them. And what are these products? Usually the most basic components of a makeup kit: lipstick, eyeliner, mascara, foundation, concealer, lip balm, blush, nail paint, and the kind. Almost every woman uses at least one, if not all, of these products. PFAs found in them have been linked to the development of cancer and birth defects. We talked about that already. But PFAs can lead to more complications like liver diseases, thyroid, hormonal disruption, even decreased immunity. And here's the interesting part. The study took samples from the biggest cosmetic brands out there. It just fell short of directly naming the companies in whose products PFAs were found. Why not name the brands involved? The answer is quite simple. For the longest time, the cosmetic industry has stood like a wall against scrutiny. It gets very uncomfortable when someone talks about chemicals used in the products. And this is a powerful industry we're talking about, with even more powerful lobbyists, the kind that can get legislation in national parliaments derailed. Last year, worldwide revenue from cosmetics was estimated to have crossed $100 billion. Do you know how big this industry is? In 2020, its market size was close to $290 billion. By 2028, it is projected to expand to over $400 billion. The U.S. Congress had a chance to rein in the cosmetics industry. In its previous session, the Congress could pass legislation that banned PFAs or forever chemicals. It did not. The legislation died. The cosmetics lobby enjoys bipartisan influence in the Congress. It's a lot better in the European Union. The European Union has tougher regulation. The EU has banned more than 1,300 chemicals in cosmetics alone. The US has banned just 11. I'll give you an example. The EU has banned formaldehyde in cosmetic products. It causes cancer, and this is well known. But the same carcinogen is found in abundance in American nail polishes and hair strengtheners. Then we have something called parabens. These chemicals are known to cause reproductive problems. They're banned in the EU, but they're used in the US. How does the EU curb the use of such toxins? Through regulation, of course. It requires manufacturers to prove that a product is safe before it can be used. The US too has such regulation, but it's applicable only to new products. So the thousands of products that are already in circulation remain unaffected. And where does India stand? India is the fourth largest revenue generator for the beauty and personal care market in the world, fourth largest. That's as of 2021. And as of last year, the market was worth about $25 billion. The industry is expected to grow at a rate of more than 6.5% over the next 5 years, which means by 2027, the market will expand to $33 billion in India. Indians don't use some unique cosmetic products. We rely on global brands, including those which are under the scanner for having toxins. And the most worrying part is that there is little or no awareness about this issue. Cosmetic products are just assumed to be safe. In fact, they're believed to be enhancers of beauty. Brands even claim that their products improve skin health. But what you use may in fact be a concoction of toxins. So what should you do? We consulted with experts and got the following answers. Check labels. Avoid products with ingredients that are harmful. Claims of pure, natural is no guarantee of safety. There is no legal backup for such claims. Also, if possible, consult with your doctor. What you use to get a killer look might in fact be killing you. We say it's time for cosmetic brands to come clean. And now it's time to wrap up with Vantage shots. We showed you the highlights of the budget speech from India today. But what about the reactions? That's what we'll leave you with. And since memes are the language of choice these days, we compiled some on the budget. We hope you like them. Statutory warning: smokers, it's not good news for you. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.
an Indian becoming a UK PM.
Well, it's not like that we are going to get the Kohinoor back. But at least India is on its way to the top, huh?
But Gautam sir, there's actually not much to celebrate.
Why not? An Indian is ruling the UK.
Indian leaders in third countries often tend to overcompensate for their minority handicap.
Key.
For example, Sunak's Home Secretary of Indian origin, Suella Braverman, disapproved of India-UK free trade because it would encourage people immigrating to the UK, and the majority of whom were Indians. Structurally, India and UK have passed baggage, but still hasn't been resolved. And that is why,
Ladies and gentlemen, India needs to significantly temper its expectations from Rishi Sunak. Presenting Vantage with me, Palki Sharma, a first-of-its-kind global show with an Indian perspective.
So, where are you investing?
Oh, China, it's just growing.
It's always been the manufacturing hub. Besides, India's struggling post-COVID.
Of course.
Sir, actually India's management of COVID has been much better. China's situation till date is unclear. After zero COVID lockdowns, China is gradually losing its supremacy as manufacturing leader. The country's share of global exports of footwear, furniture, or clothing accessories has fallen since 2016. Meanwhile, India has bounced back. So by the looks of it,
India could become the global manufacturing hub by 2030. Presenting Vantage with me, Palki Sharma, a first-of-its-kind global show with an Indian perspective.
Mismanaged vaccination drive, broken healthcare systems, citizens taking matters into their own hands. India's failure in managing the COVID-19 crisis is staggering.
Want stories but without the West spin on it? Presenting Vantage with me, Palki Sharma, a first-of-its-kind global show with an Indian perspective.